and forth and a sharing. So please pipe in. I'll keep an eye on the chat in case it's hard to cut in verbally. But I know Christine, Julie, and Marissa have each been gracious enough to think of some things that they want to share and are willing to share about strategies they've seen as listing agents and strategies that they've experienced as buying agents. It is such a tough market right now. Oh my gosh. And we're mostly going to want to focus on strategies for winning for buyers in multiple offer. But we should also, if there's time and inclination, talk about managing strategies for best practices for managing multiple offers from the listing side as well. Okay, who wants to kick us off? Julie, Christine, Marissa? I primed you guys, so who would like to go first? Anyone? Christine, you're still on mute, but I see your mouth.
Sorry, I'm muted. I mean, I just kind of like have some talking points. The last couple of offers that I wrote for clients, we were competing with a lot of people, namely the one on Ponell Shores that had apparently 33 offers, not 29, a measly 29. And so like, I think for me, what has been really kind of eye-opening has been having those difficult conversations, like especially with new clients in the very beginning, kind of like setting the stage and setting their expectations. Not just that, like, yes, the market is hot, but also like, what does that mean to them? Like, how do they understand what that means? So like, I've been kind of showing clients sometimes, you know, properties that sold, how many days it took for it to go pending, how many offers, talking to agents in the office, having like those good relationships and really getting them to understand the importance of their financing. If they have the ability to go cash, if they have the ability to pay their closing costs, all of those, like, you really have to get deep into those things in that first meeting, because otherwise you're going to be wasting everyone's time and their hearts are going to just be breaking over and over again, and it sucks. But if you have those conversations, like I have a client right now who's out of town, and they were really pushing back on using Bank of America. And I was like, look, right now you're just let's just monitor the market. And so I kind of just showed them like some of the houses that they really liked. I was like, look how quickly that one went. I talked to the agent, there were 4 or 5 offers or whatever the situation was. And they were like kind of starting to get freaked out. And I was like, I'm not telling you this to freak you out, but I'm telling you, you know, we have to set the stage and the expectation that even if there are no offers right now, there probably will be. And so I was able to get them to kind of see the importance of switching to a local lender, and just little things like that. So that's kind of my thoughts, at least starting the conversation.
That's great. Can you elaborate on how you got them to use a local lender? So what are you said let's just look at the market. What did you actually say that made them realize that a local lender is going to give them an advantage?
So I explained to them that, you know, a lot of the time we're going to be competing with people who are offering very similar to you. And from a seller's perspective, what's going to make them trust your offer over someone else's? And of course, there's so many different things that go into that. But for the lending piece specifically, I was like, if it comes down and you're competing against the exact same offer, if you are with the Bank of America and you don't really have a direct contact and the seller has questions about financing, or, you know, and they don't have a direct person to talk to, it's going to be a lot more complicated and complex versus someone that they may have already they may have financed or know someone who financed with the local lender. Their agent might have worked with, you know, Tammy and Cenas or Karen from Guild, and will be able to vouch for their reputation locally. And it can come down to that, and it often does in the current market. And so just kind of talking through that with them helped them understand like the importance of every little detail matters. Like, I'm not affiliated with these people. It's just genuinely like what's helped clients win in the past.
Mm-hmm. There was a sentence that someone came up with that was brilliant when we were creating the buyer's book for the brokerage that said, by using a lender who has a positive reputation established with the local real estate community, you will increase your chances. And I think that positive reputation with the local real estate community is some verbiage that makes more sense to people. And that little detail matters. Okay, cool. Thank you, Christine. Lots of good stuff in there. Go, Julie.
Well, no, just to tag on the back of what Christine was saying, you often do get pushback from buyers who don't actually have a relationship with, let's say, for instance, Bank of America. It just so happens that they're the one down the road, or for whatever reason, particularly if they're not local. But I always use the analogy of buying a new car. You wouldn't just buy the first car that popped up on your search. You would do some research and you would comparison shop. And in the same way, I usually say to them, you know, I'm not necessarily going to walk you away from your lender, but please contact a local lender. They all want your business. They all, and for all the reasons that Christine's saying, but at least see what they've got to say. And to be honest, in the past, that's kind of weeded out a few buyers that actually really weren't ready. Because if they're not ready to have that conversation with another lender, I don't necessarily think they're ready to be in an aggressive market where they need to be able to want to be that winning offer and do what it takes. So that was just me reinforcing what Christine said.
So Julie, are you saying that you require them to go sit down with another lender to keep, or kind of say, well, let's not go look at that house until—
If they've not got a local lender, I will absolutely have exactly the same conversation as Christine. I will put my listing agent hat on and say, if I've got multiple offers, I will insist that if, you know, that the favorite one for the seller, if it's not a local lender, that will be a conversation I have with their agent, because, you know, time has told and experience has told that, you know, you don't need them till you need them. But, you know, there's all sorts of reasons that we all know for why we want to use local lenders, and we just need to educate the buyers as such.
Okay, great.
And I definitely have that same conversation along those lines, but I also do find when I get my buyers talking to one of my preferred local lenders, it almost always ends up that they choose that local lender, just because of the situation of they call you back and it's the same person, and Tammy responds on Saturdays and their availability. So I actually focus on that aspect of it to get my people in with my preferred lenders. I don't know, 95% of my people go with the same lender for that very reason, is that you build that relationship with her, and they do. I got a text last night, I'm so glad you introduced me to Tammy. She is going to be a crucial part to my finding, because they understand that importance. And I don't necessarily go so far to say your offer won't get accepted, but there are times where people mention a lender where I'm like, ooh, I've never heard of them. Do you know what kind of response time they have, or what their underwriting process is? Is there somebody I can talk to so we can know, so we have the best? And all of a sudden they're concerned a little bit. And I refinanced my house with an online lender. It was fine. Sometimes they're fine. Sometimes they're not. And we just don't know that. So I have a very real, raw conversation with people. Like, have you worked with them before? Do you know their background? Do you know that? And a lot of times it gets buyers going, okay, well, I'll talk to 2 or 3. And I can get them to a means to an end of a local lender by just showing them performance.
That's great. That's great. Okay, so
And even, I just wanted to add to that too, like the speed thing that you were saying. I had someone who pushed back, and I was like, I'm not going to force you. Like, this is ultimately always your decision. But I am, you know, as your trusted real estate advisor, this is what I do professionally full time. You know, this is what I know to work. And I always use the phrase too, like, as you know, the market moves really fast. So if you're having a hard time getting Bank of America on the phone, imagine when we're competing, you know, do you want it to come down to that, to missing something?
Right.
Yeah.
Great. I want to touch on what Christine brought up about preparing buyers. Go back to that for a little bit. And then I want to making sure we get to actual strategies in writing offers. So first of all, anything else that anybody wants to add about preparing your buyers for this market?
Oh, I'm blunt as can be. I had a listing appointment last night for 2 hours, listing and buying, and I basically laid it all out to them with what we have to do because contingent isn't happening. And I'm like, I'm going to be blunt. I'm going to be maybe slightly rude, but I'm going to be real. You want a house? This is what we're going to do. And it works almost, it works. You've got to prepare them with the reality. I mean, I tell my buyers now, it might take you writing on 7 houses to get the one you want. If you're in that price point, that, you know, if we're Navy and we're looking for 2 to 3 years, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you need a roof over your head. We've got to categorize what we want. And you have to have those hard conversations. You have to be very blunt with, you're going to lose a few houses. I'm not going to guarantee you're going to win them, especially when people are going, I don't know, 150,000 over list price. Just kidding, Christine. But, you know, you just don't know what you're competing with because your buyer has parameters on what they can and cannot do with their qualifications and comfort levels, that you have to be honest. They have to be not so in love with this house that they get bid out on one house and they stop looking forever. So it's just real, raw conversations. And most people appreciate that, in my opinion.
I would also add that sometimes people have a relationship that makes sense with a non-local lender. So if you appeal to them that if you want to get the best deal, you have to shop. You should talk to 2, 3, 4, 5 lenders because the products differ. Don't you want the best deal? And while you're doing that, preparing to buy, it's really important in multiple offer situations to have immediate response. So while you're asking them, how can I get the best deal from local and non-local lenders, you will learn if you are dealing with one person who responds on the weekends, et cetera. So it's always best if they can learn themselves rather than me telling them, no, you should use my lender.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
I always put them I try and talk a lot in the third party, and thereby try and prepare them for the fact that, you know, most of us are dealing day in and day out with Navy buyers. That particular generation still seems to feel across the board that they need to be haggling, they need to be negotiating, there's no such thing as full price, etc., etc. So rather than, and I do say that's just not the market as it is at the moment, but I'm also always reinforcing. I mean, if I've had them on my books long enough and we aren't getting the winning bid, I'm always telling them what that winning bid was. I'm always running market analysis for comps of anything I'm showing them, even if I don't send it to them. I've got it in my memory before I show them the next homes, and I say, by the way, 1, 2 doors down, sold, it went 105%. I'm finding it's effective to show a percentage over list price, because you'll say it went at 105% of list price, and the first time you say it, it doesn't necessarily hit home. Then when you actually point out to them that extra 5%, how much that actually was in dollars, then they kind of have a bit of a come to Jesus meeting and realize that, you know, they can't be dithering over $1,000. We're talking much more aggressive in that market. And I also get a lot of people who, well, how high do we have to go? And again, I'm having the conversation that says, I've shown you the comps, I've shown you what the market's doing. You tell me what your walkaway price is on this home. Because the list price isn't it, unless it's been on the market for a while. And then we're in a whole different world of hurt because we've probably got condition issues and stuff to deal with. So I'm perpetually reinforcing, even if I'm not in a position at that particular moment to be writing an offer for them.
Perfect.
So can I make a comment and ask a question? So, you know, I recommend that my people look under their max what they qualify for, because that gives them room to, you know, escalate if they need to. But I guess I want your guys' opinion on, just for example, like say they max 400 is what they're approved for. Are you guys doing the same thing? And how much, like say you guys should really be looking at 375, like so that you have room to escalate to 4 or even lower than that?
I think 375 is like what I'd say for 400 right
Mhm.
now, at least. I'd still let them see homes that come in at 400, but if they're approved up to 400, I have that conversation, just like I'm sure you do too. It's going to be much more realistic to find something at 375 that you're really happy with, knowing that we can comfortably not push your comfort zone.
Yeah, I'm seeing about the same, but I'm thinking I don't tell them not to look up to their price point, but I typically don't have buyers that are looking to purchase at their max qualification. I actually don't like when my buyers like to do that because that makes me nervous that they're at 50% debt to income ratio. But
Totally.
but I don't necessarily think I have that conversation but I do say you want to give yourself room. And if I know like the house is going to have multiple offers, that's my first comment to them. We need to get in there because this is going to have multiple offers. It's going to go above list price. And so I'm telling them that, but I think they're still looking up to what our comfort level is. Because I think depending on what price point, some of them are not going, 30,000 over list price. They're only going 2 or 3 or 5,000 over list price, that I don't want to discourage them from looking at those because, what if they don't end up in multiple offers and then they're mad at me because they didn't see it.
No, I would still send them everything. I think it's more them just being realistic about
Right.
like, okay, this is what, and it also gives them an idea of what prices are for different types of home and quality and features and stuff. So,
Mhm.
so it's probably how much it escalates, of course, is different on price point and home specifically.
Right.
I often wrote the lender in as well on the basis that hopefully they've already picked a local lender and get them involved as well in the conversation as to, you might qualify for this amount. Do you really want that budget every month for what that equals in the mortgage payment? And I do also as well, particularly when I know that I do err on the side of caution of trying not to take them to their limit. But if I know they've got some wiggle room, but they're reticent, and again, they're driving the bus, not me, but I do ask the lenders to always point out, how much more it's going to cost them if they go 5 over, 10 over, actually on their mortgage payments, because I think a lot of them see that 10,000 as a chunk of change, but actually, and not to be too flippant, but when you break it down over 30 years, the difference it makes on the loan payment with the mortgage rates as they are at the moment, you suddenly see the light bulb go on and they're like, oh, well, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. So I always try and get the lender to have that sort of conversation with them just to reinforce how they make their decisions on where they're comfortable with their budget.
Yeah, it's less than $50 a month. I usually tell them that $10,000 is less than $50 a month difference. So $2,000.
But I like to get it from the lender too. I like to make people deal with their, not just as me as the expert as well, because I just think it reinforces it if another expert is confirming what you've already said.
I say that a lot though. I will not lie.
Yeah, I talk about lattes a lot. Yeah.
That is
It's
definitely in
latte.
my wheelhouse. Now that you say that, I'm like, I totally say that, and it's a little bit less now, but historically it's been $10,000 is $5 per thousand. And it's a little bit less right now. And when you say that,
kind of
people are
almost
like,
half that now.
But if you say to somebody, well, you're going to lose this by $2,000, are you willing to spend $10 extra a month? That's not even 2 Starbucks. Like most of them are like, oh,
Yeah.
wait, hold on. Yeah, I'll definitely do that. Definitely do that.
So let's, do you guys mind if we move into, or actually just before we do that, I'm just going to share some numbers while you guys were talking that I popped up that is an example. So hang on a minute. Let's show, where is it? Oh, in Postparks. There we go. Sorry. So this is North Whidbey, 300,000 to 450 in the and it's showing over the last year. And when you get up to where we're at 101.5% over percentage of list price on average. But when you go to the smaller lots, 0.5 acres or less, it jumps up to 102.3%. I still feel like that's not high enough to reflect what's going on. So then if you look at the last 90 days of solds in 813 and start looking at the above list price, then you really start to see the picture. It's almost shocking when you see something that only went for $2,000 above list price versus what we're seeing more like 15 above grand or 30 above list price. And is that
And
how?
Kristen,
Yes.
Kristen, that metric has always bothered me a little bit because it's not original list price sometimes. So
Yeah,
it's-
there's a way to do original list price on here. So percentage of original list price, and that does make a difference. It comes down to 101.8. Is that what you're talking about, Mike?
I think what he's saying is it goes by the list price when it went pending. Because that's what that metric usually pulls from. So if they've had a price drop, it is skewed.
Right. So this is list. That's what this one would be, percentage of list price. And then this
Mhm.
is percentage of the original listing price to
Okay.
show that difference. But
Mhm.
what I was doing in this search in Matrix is I only pulled for homes that had been on the days on market of less than 3 days or less than 2 days. Sorry.
Mm.
I just pulled homes that have gone really, really fast so that you can because anything that has a price drop is probably not something that we're going to be comparing to anyway. So these are homes that went under contract in the last 90 days in under 2 days. And there's, I don't know how many of them, but just to kind of scroll through and give people an idea of hot homes. Because I figure the ones that have had price drops have something else going on with them. And I don't want to, that's
Right.
not something you want to have them compared to. Okay, sorry. So I just thought I'd share that real fast since we were talking about that. And then let's nitty gritty. A beautiful home comes on the market, you know it's going to be hot, your people are ready to go, you've had the you've prepped them, they're working with your preferred lender, maybe you've even lost out on a few deals, they want it so bad they're willing to do it all. What do you do?
Call the agent.
Mm-hmm.
Always call the agent. Okay.
I specifically ask the agents what the other price of the offers are.
Yeah.
I will ask them 100% what do I have to do to win? There are very few agents that will tell you, oh, I can't tell you that, because it really is in the best interest of their seller, because then they'll get a higher offer. So that comes in your relationships with the agents and whoever the listing agent is. I've had people tell me exactly the dollar amount I have to do to beat it over and over again. And that is, I don't know why more people don't make that phone call. As a listing agent, I do, a higher percentage of listings than buyers right now, but I don't get that phone call very often. And I am amazed because that's a conversation I have with my sellers every time. If somebody asks me if we get multiple offers, can I tell them the other offers? Do you want me to tell them? Well, what would it benefit? Well, they'll bid above the most recent, instead of the whole, well, it's a good offer. Well, then you can get another offer $5,000 above when the other offer's $7,000 above and they would have gone $8,000 above. I mean, you can get there. And it's not a bad thing to tell people what the other offers are on the table. So that's my first call.
Take, which I like how you
What-
phrase it. What do
Mhm.
I have to do to win?
Mhm.
Not what,
Mhm.
and
Yep. And I ask specifically, do you have a cash offer on the table? Because then I know not to get my people's hopes up if we're, BA 0% down. I ask if there's any terms that their seller would prefer. That involves things like, do they need to lease back? They're buying something else. Do they have a preferred closing date? Do they have any sort of unique circumstance that would make them choose my offer over another? I ask those 4 questions or 5 questions every single time. And I also have my buyers write a love letter that I usually edit. I'm not gonna lie.
Hey,
So,
Marissa, go through those 4 or 5 points again. So you're asking terms that they
listing
prefer.
agent, I ask them, what do I need to do to win it? Is there any specific circumstances that would cause the seller to choose my offer over another? Do you have a cash offer or a really high down payment offer on the table? And I always ask, how many offers you have and when you're reviewing, et cetera, that kind of stuff. But
Mhm.
I feel like I just missed one.
You did. You missed.
I
Are
can't.
there any terms the seller would prefer? And then you gave some great examples of the kinds of terms that you suggest to them, like move in, move out date.
Move in, move out dates, specific there, rent back, lease back, any sort of furniture that they want to get rid of or things like that to take that burden off of them. Because I'll even have my guy come and pull a dump run if that's going to take what it's going to take to get my buyers in there. $200 for the dump is easy on my part, and you can win an offer. You really can.
Great.
So
I have one
definitely
in
on my
multiple.
wheelhouse.
Sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead, Mike.
I've won in multiple offers a bunch of times by just delving into, even before I asked the question, just looking at the public available information and trying to figure out everything about the seller's circumstances and trying to put yourself in the seller's shoes even before you put the offer in or make the call to the other agent. And if the seller's been in there, if they're elderly lady, if they've been in there for 40 years, whatever it might be, price is not the only thing we're talking about here. And so I've won multiple offers with a lower priced offer than other competition just by taking close, learning as much as possible about the seller. And sometimes you'll ask a listing agent, tell me about the seller's circumstances. Sometimes they'll say one sentence, and sometimes they'll talk to you for 10 minutes. So everything you can get to craft the best offer, it's been very successful for me.
And you can do that sometimes when you're viewing the home by looking around. You can see their pain and pleasure points simply by looking around the house. And those are, when I coach my buyers into writing love letters, we look at the house. We pay attention to what's going on in the house. Is it very obviously a divorce situation? Is it very obviously we have kids? Are we grandparents? And then we hit those points really hard in our letter, and we try to make people cry.
Did you raise your family there?
Yep.
That's that kind of all the emotional points you can hit in a love letter. It works.
Oh, it works so much. That whole generic letter of like, I walked in, I knew I was home. That doesn't work. I get 6 of them on the same, they're almost verbatim. That's not what works on those. And you've got to, Gabby, a love letter is the letter introducing the buyer to the seller. So you would say, Megan and Jared are moving here from the East Coast with their 2 little kids. There's 2 pictures of kids at the bottom of my letter. Usually cute pictures, funny pictures, something like that that's going to grab their attention. And it explains different things. And you don't just say they walked in and knew they were home. You say, they're looking forward to eating, if they got a big dining room table, hosting family events around this, and you just totally read the seller, which most of the time your buyer is somebody who's going to be doing something to what the seller is doing in the house. But I really do specific stuff in that house that's going to hit home with the seller, that's going to like you want to pull at the heartstrings, because it makes a huge difference. I've had sellers choose offers based on love letters over and over in this market. I mean, I had 7 offers on one, and my people are like, I'm connected to this offer. I'm like, the other's offers 10 grand more. Nope, I want this offer. I am connected to this person because of what was written in their love letter. Now, as a listing agent, I'm not as big of a fan as the love letters.
Another item that has worked multiple times in love letters for me is that admiring the design of whatever is important in the house, whatever they clearly design themselves, or whatever the gardening is done, or whatever it might be. You just have to figure out what is going to spring to the seller. And we focus rightly on price, but if you are selling a home you've been into for a long time and it's appreciated in equity, and you are either free and clear or nearly free and clear, what's an extra $5,000 at that point? It's just doesn't, instead of selling it to somebody who you feel connected to. It's very effective.
Great. Okay, so we've talked, you found the house, you're getting ready, you call the agent, you make sure there's an awesome love letter. What else do you do? Is there anything else you do before actually pulling the offer together?
Yeah,
So-
I reach out to home inspectors. If it's on septic, I'll reach out to a septic inspector just to try and find out what is the soonest possible we could, get that in there. And then I also pull all the county records. So that way, like if there is anything in the supplements, if there's anything, any permits, anything in the county records that I can share with the buyer so that they are in the loop. And then just let the listing agent know, like, hey, look, I pulled all this stuff. I've got someone lined up. I've got my offer. Please keep me looped in. And then constantly staying in touch with them, not like overdoing it, but, really staying informed as to how many other offers are coming in, and any changes that you need to do to stay above, competing with the others.
Okay, cool. That's afterwards. Awesome.
And
Marcy?
honestly, on that same kind of idea, if you count days, just a little tip that I use all the time, if you count days, you remember in our contracts, 5 days or less don't include weekends. And if we're writing an offer on a Thursday, you can use those days to your advantage and use the weekends, and it appears shorter than it is. And like this past month, I wrote one with I think I had a 6-day inspection window, but because of the weekends and the holidays and Thanksgiving, it actually gave me 11 days. Whereas if I would have written straight 10, I would have got 10. And so my offer looked like I had a lot. It's kind of a mind trick, but a lot of listing agents don't catch those things. I will say that. And so you end up with a lot more time, but use those days and that little technique to your advantage, especially when you're writing on a Wednesday, Thursday, to get yourself just as much time with looking more competitive.
Like that. Okay, great. Anything else before actually going into the forms and writing terms? Okay, so then you kind of started already in there. That trick of 5 days or less for home inspections, giving you more than 5 days versus picking like 6 days or 7 days or 10 days.
10.
Yeah. So isn't it? It's 5 days or less, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But
So always
you
doing 5 days.
But that, so anything else, if you choose 7, you're, yeah.
Yeah. Just choose 5 and you practically have 7 or more. Yep. Cool. Okay. And then I know there's a lot of terms we could go over. Heidi had already asked this question in there, but escalation clauses used to be, I think, used less, and they're like in every single deal now since there's so many multiple offers. So talk to us about the use of escalation clauses and what you're finding with those that works best. Tricks and tips.
I don't want to take over all of this. If you guys want to answer, you can.
No, I'll pop in.
Okay.
Go. You can go first, Marissa. Go.
I see escalation clauses all the time. If I'm writing, my escalation clause kicks in. I typically, if I know I'm competitive, I'm going above list price, not escalation clause at list price. I want it above list price and then an escalation on top of it. I don't want to be with everybody else's offer at list price, because typically what you see is if you get more than one offer, you're going to have several of them at list price with an escalation clause. I want to be unique and above. So I'll go 5,000 above with an escalation of another, whatever, depending on the house. So that's one of the techniques I use.
I think I'm missing that. And I might be the only one, but I'm going to bring up the escalation clause just so I understand what you're saying.
My offer price is not list price using escalation. My offer
Got
price is above list price using an escalation on top of that.
Got it.
And one of the tricks to kind of be a winning escalation clause, I find, is that you don't end on an even number. You go, 500 above up to 320,500 versus 320. You tend to be that top of the line by $500 or, whatever. If you everybody ends on an even number, that's what our brains do. That's how our brains work. If you get yourself into a unique situation where you're just slightly above, you tend to be above the other typical escalation writers in this town. So that's one technique on escalation clauses. I don't know, anybody else have one?
I do all those same things too. Yeah. I mean, you hit the nail on the head there.
Any thoughts about increments? So you said 500 in your example.
That's only on the lower end homes. I usually do more than that.
Okay.
Yeah, because the way I explain it to my clients too is, is a seller really going to take one offer over another because of $500? Like other factors might come in. So I'll sometimes do like 1250, and it's kind of just, it's same thing as that odd, weird increment. But it really, I mean, if you won by $1,200, it could be the differentiator.
Great. And using escalation clauses regardless of cash or financing every offer, is there an instance where you wouldn't use an escalation clause?
There are some agents who just, when you've made that initial contact with them, and I think no, I'm not going to go down that route.
Yeah, this is recorded.
Many of them just want highest and best. They don't want to be dealing with escalation clauses. And if they truly tell me they want highest and best, then I probably will go down that route with an additional follow up. Let me know if I still need to adjust.
I would say if your financing is strong, if you come in cash with high earnest money, we tend to ignore earnest money as a term because we're so used to Navy buyers. If you come hard with a cash offer with heavy earnest money, short time to decide, you don't include an escalation clause because you're coming in confident, and the other stuff all means you're not confident.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And depending
As a listing agent, I weigh the down payment more than earnest money, I'll admit, Mike.
Me too.
well, his example is cash. So I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking.
Well, yeah. Cash high earnest money is good, definitely good. But you're not competing with the general typical houses. You're doing multiple offers. Well, I guess they all have multiple offers now, but in the past, historically.
And you guys are still giving, if they are all financing, you're still weighting conventional over FHA, conventional with a higher percent down. What are your thoughts on that?
Depends who the lender is.
Say that again, Julie. I think I missed that.
I said it can depend who the lender is.
Right. More weighted towards
How
the
confident I am in those hoops.
Mine's down payment because there's plenty of VA that, they qualify better than a conventional loan. They just are choosing not to do down payment. So some of that's a conversation. I mean, how many VA buyers have plenty of money to put a down payment, but why would you when you're getting a 2% interest? I mean, that's cheap money. So financially that makes sense. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not as strong of a buyer. So I tend to try to not stereotype the VA in my brain that way. And I explain that to my sellers that way. VA, it's not that they don't have the down payment. Sometimes it's that they choose to not do the down payment. And that comes back down to the lender conversation and how well qualified they are and how, if you have that communication with their agent or the listing agent, hey, my buyer's VA, they're choosing to use that VA loan, if that's the difference. And, we're seeing more and more VA with a down payment lately, though. I'm seeing a lot of that.
Yeah.
Closing cost requests, are you seeing them ever asked for anymore?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
But I'd always build it on the top with a buffer. I mean, I proceed in the same way as Marissa does to, I'm always going to go over list and then put an escalation in. And I'm going to go over list. I'm going to add on the closing costs and then go over on that before I do anything else. Yeah. Unless it's been on the market 20 days or whatever, then all bets are off. But in a multiple offer situation, I'd really try not to even ask for them if I could avoid it. But with VA a lot still, Marissa, mine tends to still not have a bean in savings, but there we go.
Yeah, I mean, it's still happening. I tell my buyers, though, if you need closing costs, it's a pretty good chance you're not going to get the house. It's a pretty good chance.
And appraisals used to be the thing to stop this, but I know a couple of you have been dealing with Tidewater, or
only if you get Bob.
Yeah.
Good
We all
God.
have to be appraising still. Oh, God.
Right, Corrine?
Oh my goodness.
So much fun. The day that he retires.
Him and
We'll throw
Jack.
a party.
We will. Okay, so any other tricky tricks that you guys have used with, I think we've covered like the basics, home inspection time period, the question of closing costs, escalation clauses, all the questions you ask the seller or the listing agent beforehand about the seller to try to get that in. Are there any other forms or tricks that you guys have found?
Yeah, the other thing too that's helped me recently was that my clients were able to pay up to a certain amount if the house didn't appraise. And
Mhm.
so that really helped us because we didn't need any credits. And it just, it helps the seller see that, okay, now we're like really over asking price. We are a VA loan, but if it doesn't appraise, then we've got that little bit of a buffer. And it's not going to be on the seller to pay for it. It would be the buyer to cover the difference. And luckily it worked out. We didn't have to, but
I
It was
use
a-
that verbiage in when buyer's agents call me on listings all the time.
yeah.
Because there's a few agents out there that are using the appraisal protection form regularly. And so if somebody calls me and asks, is there anything you can do? I'm like, well, the appraisal protection form would be fantastic. And I'm seeing more and more of them used, and a lot of times on VA. It's not usually more than, I don't think I've seen more than $5,000.
Mhm.
But I definitely am seeing that one regularly. And I'm also seeing pass fail inspections.
Yeah.
How are
I
you
forgot about
writing
that.
that?
How am I what?
How are they writing the pass fail inspections, or how are they
On an
proceeding?
addendum.
So they're just saying.
I have successfully won multiples many times by telling my buyers that what the seller, depending on the seller's circumstances, but if they're elderly, for example,
Mhm.
say I will pay the first up to $5,000 of any 35R repairs. Sounds like a lot of money, but in reality, you're not going to pay it. So the buyer's not going to pay it. You find $5,000 in repairs. You ask for $3,000, but we pay the $3,000, or you just waive it all. The psychology of the buyer doing that is they say, once we get the house, we'll fix everything. The psychology of the seller receiving that, and again, I've beat many times higher priced offers, is now I don't have to worry about it. You're not trying to claw back anything. And especially in the little old lady scenario, they don't have to try to arrange contractors, et cetera, et cetera. It's a very good trick.
I picked one of Mike's offers because of that. It
Yep.
does, it works. And if you put it at a different, I think on that one, Mike might have been $2,500 and it was enough for my people. But if you think about it on the buyer's perspective, if you find a major repair, seller's still paying for it. Roofs, siding, paint, all of that. It still doesn't
Exactly.
fall within that parameter. So you're still able to get major things where, you could nickel and dime $2,500, $5,000 worth of repairs on a house with, a couple hours of an electrician and, things like that, that most buyers are going to find and pay in houses right now that they're taking at ridiculous prices anyways.
That's kind of a nice juxtaposition to pass fail, but it's to
Mm-hmm.
cover the littles. Cool. Any other cool tricks you've seen out there, everyone?
I actually have to jump off. Have to make another appointment, but bye.
Thanks, Christine. Appreciate it. Waiving inspections.
I'm seeing a lot of it, well, especially on the south end. There's a lot of
Yeah,
that happening.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's almost automatic now on because I've got a line of buyers on South End waterfront that is just like, it's automatic. Nobody's even really considering it.
For above a certain price, Mike, you're talking about.
No.
Yeah, those are the higher end prices, and they're coming from Seattle where it's normal. So waiving inspections or having the inspection, but waiving the 35R repairs. Both of them.
Mine's not even higher price points. My listing down there, I had 2 offers, both of them waiving inspections. It seems to be the norm down on the south end, and I seem to see it up here on the north end on higher end properties.
Yes.
or something that's unique. Beach access ones, the lady on Scenic Heights, she had a full waiver of her inspection on that one, you know, and it's just, especially I'm seeing listing agents accept offers with waived inspections, even if they have a review date. If you get in there early and waive your inspection, I'm seeing them accepting them before their review date, which how many agents are waiting till the review date to submit their offer?
Right. Big mistake.
completely miss it.
Big mistake about that. Yeah, I've
Yep.
seen many this year, many waterfront homes were accepted before the review date. And I think
Yep.
that's going to continue.
And it's all communication with the listing broker. I mean, it really is all communication with the listing broker. And I think a lot of people in our industry are going towards texting and this and that and not even checking in. I can't tell you how many offers I get when I've never even spoken to the agent. And sometimes they haven't even seen the house. I don't know they're writing an offer. You know, I have no idea they even expect it. And you see this, and you know, it's just talk to the listing agent is so important.
That's great.
This is kind of a listing agent hat on, but it does apply, I think, if you are representing a buyer, because it's something you may assume, but I wouldn't assume it. As a listing agent, I've started asking people who are submitting the offers whether their clients were actually with them. Because for me, there's an additional element of doubt. I know we shouldn't discriminate against the poor military people who are, you know, in Lemoore or wherever, but I've been bitten more than once as a listing agent when they haven't actually seen it. And it doesn't matter in this market if you're a day on market or 5 days on market and you pop back on, that's done you harm. So I do actually ask if they've had their clients with them. And therefore, if I was representing a buyer, even though I don't need to say it, I would absolutely let the listing agent know that I toured it with my buyers, and they, you know, I mean, I would let them know that it was in person rather than remotely.
Some of them try to get away without you knowing that their buyers weren't there. They'll say,
Mm, absolutely, yeah.
I don't tell them unless they
I've done
ask.
it.
Yeah,
what's the term that I've heard recently that's like I showed my buyers, but they don't say that it was
On
digital.
yeah.
Facebook,
I don't share it unless I'm asked.
Mhm.
There's not happening.
But which I say, for me, I'd just like to reinforce the fact to that agent that my guys have actually stood there with me, and they, you know, let me open every cupboard door from them with COVID regulations, and, you know, whatever you can do to get the edge, really.
I love it.
I FaceTime them though from there, and I make sure if they ask, they know that they were FaceTimed. And a lot of times when I do that, I say, we spent an hour on FaceTime, you know, or something like that, to show that there's a little bit more involved than just me taking a 2-minute video and running it through the house. Because FaceTime is such better than a video, but
I
some
want
places maybe you can't do that.
to be cognizant of time. Sorry, Marissa. So I want to leave these last 9 minutes we have for any questions, and Heidi's way ahead of me, and ask about backup offers. What are we feeling about backup offers?
I've been successful on two.
One in that's going to lose. I have one in that's going to lose. I think they're placate the buyers. You have nothing wrong with it, but I'm not that big a fan.
The reason I'm not a big fan of it, like I just took one on my listing on Starflower. You know, they had a backup offer we did take one because my elderly seller didn't want to go back on the market, but they're typically at list price. We're not dealing with the competitiveness. So I would like to write one as a buyer, but as a listing agent, I don't like to take them a lot of times, because if you go back on the market and if you had 4 offers the first time, yes, it's a possibility you'll have 4 offers again and you're going to escalate. And a lot of times your backup offer, you cannot use the escalation that's in there because there's no other competing offer at that point in time. So you have to be cognizant about what the situation is if it is a backup. If you're a buyer, be careful with how you write it, because, you know, there's definitely you could be way above list price and then you're the only offer on the table. And you're paying more than you really would have needed to as a backup offer.
If it goes on and it doesn't go back up. To the same price.
Yeah.
Okay.
It just depends though on your buyers. I mean, I've had two recently. One representing buyers where we put it in a backup position and an addendum was done for the price to match the original price offer. My guys were still happy to do it and are still happy as clams in the house now. And then just recently I'm the listing agent, and again the backup offer was negotiated on the basis of their original offer that didn't win, not list price.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Match the best
I-
offer, match the offer.
you know, I kind of I don't see any downside to them really, as long as your client is happy.
And
I hear what Mike's saying, and I hear what you're saying, Marissa, about you may end up over what you were originally, what you may have been able to get back into the mix once it came back on market. But, you know, again, if your buyer was happy in the first place,
Saves you the heartache of
you know, it locks it in, as opposed to them having the heartache of going back in another situation where there are unknowns. I don't know. I don't have a problem with them.
Great. Good feedback from all you. Any other burning questions? I think we'll probably only have time for one more, because I promised to keep this to an hour. And this was great. You guys, tons of notes, lots of valuable stuff here. Is there any other burning points that anyone wanted to share?
I have a question that is, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So how do I encourage my buyers who keep losing out because they have financing and they're not cash? And they're just giving up and saying, we're not even going to buy a house. We can't possibly buy a house. What do you say to them? It's just discouraging.
Are they not able to go up high enough?
Right. No, because they're losing out to cash offers and they have a loan.
Are they looking at waterfront?
No, not waterfront, just water views, a lot of them, but they even just a nice $600,000 spot, but they're just missing them because they have to get a loan and they don't have cash.
They
Is
highly
the-
qualified?
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't have any worries about, so actually one that just tried to bump a certain agent on an apartment complex I have, wrote an offer without a financing addendum because they were confident they could get financing in a certain period of time. It's dangerous, it's a little risky, but it's happening. So because they threw in a feasibility period versus a financing addendum, they appeared as cash. And they were not cash. But if you can get your financing done, if you're dealing with that kind of property and you want to do a different type of offer, you can do a little trick that way. As long as you know they're well qualified that they're going to buy it and you're not worried about appraisal or anything like that, you can do it under a feasibility or something else other than a financing contingency. And that might give them a little bit of weight. Just introduce some tricks, give them the options of those. And not everyone's going to get beat out by cash. There's a lot of cash buying our waterfront and water view right now, but there's not a lot of cash buying anything else. So we got to run out of the cash buyers here soon, don't we? I mean,
Well,
Not
I'm
really.
going to do some analysis after this on what we're seeing with loan.
I'd also say, on the same point, every financed offer does not require a financing contingency. And
correct.
This is one thing I've seen that people don't seem to grasp.
Right.
Every financed offer, if you put down, I mean, you can actually leverage the unique, the 813 is so unique with such low earnest money, typically in the market. You can write one without a financing contingency and tell your buyers to put down $1,000 or $1,500. And if the financing falls through, you lose the $1,000 or $1,500. And you're talking a $500,000 home. It's the mechanism that works.
Yep.
Once it's accepted, you have to tell the listing agent that, hey, by the way, we're getting financing, but it's, we don't have a contingency. But that's
Yeah.
Jen
And
has
again,
a
with
comment.
the listing agent's hat on, if I had a cash offer, I'd be asking for an evidence of funds.
Yes,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Not all do. Many
Not
do.
everybody does.
Nope.
Wow.
Well, we all
And
know-
maybe they have the funds, but they're choosing to not use them.
Correct. I have clients like that, in a 2% mortgage environment. If you could, why would you pay cash? Use somebody else's money, but you don't have to, and it can really make it strengthen. You don't have to say, oh, my clients, my buyers have a lender, so therefore I have to put a financing contingency on it. That's not the way it works.
Okay.
Jen, did Julie get your comment?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, I guess I always ask for evidence of funds. So and Marissa's like, they're not even asking for it. Well, that's awesome. So I guess you can take that risk, that's the way it's gonna be. So
Not
I mean, the one I'm talking about was a $1.5 million property, and they were able to show me an evidence of funds, but they intended to finance it.
Right.
I was like, oh, I mean, it happens all the time. Like you've got the funds in your retirement plan. You don't plan on tapping into it, but you've got it. And there's a lot of people out there that do have $400,000 or $500,000 in their retirement.
Also, the same thing happens with anybody who's financing out of, if you got Amazonians as clients, if they cash that Amazon or Microsoft or whatever stock, they have a huge capital gains bill. So why wouldn't they just finance that? But you can still put a cash offer and show evidence of funds.
And Heidi, I would go back to everything that was said before. There were so many good tips, and we'll at least have the recording if you need to go back, and I'll try to get these notes typed up, and then just go back and follow all the great questions to the selling agent, and one will pop if you
Yeah,
can.
get tricky. Throw everything at them. Just give them all the options, because it is. I mean, it's cash to a seller. It's cash in the end, whether it's financed or it's cash.
Yeah.
They get paid in a lump sum. So if you make it enticing to them in any other way or above and beyond, you still have a chance.
So grateful to you all for coming. I don't know about you, but I thought there was just a ton of golden nuggets. So thank you to everyone who shared and asked questions. And this will be recorded and put up on the hub. And if this brought up for you other topics that we could do the same kind of roundtable sharing and discussion, please let me know and we'll do some more of it. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.